Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to The Good Life, or Living the Dream. Now, today we have two people to help me, but first of all, I want to say this is coming to you from Arrow 92.7 FM in Masterton, New Zealand, for all those who are all over the world. We also go out as a podcast and on TV and YouTube if you want to follow up later. We are sponsored by Joan Kelly, Estate Agents of Carterton, so thank you very much. And this series covers all sorts of topics. We've been covering things about buying the block, accommodation, livestock, which was basically sheep last time. And today we're going to be talking about preparing that very important plots for your vegetables. So let me first say hello. First of all, we've got Anna-Marie. Hello, Anna-Marie.
Hello, Maggie. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm pleased to see you here. All smiles. We're all in our outfits to show we've been working. And Marnie Rutherford, our regular co-host now. Thanks very much. Now, the two of you, I know, have been very, very busy because we're autumn and we're starting to prepare for winter, but actually preparing for spring. So I'm going to kick off first and ask you, Anna-Marie, you've been very busy actually building gardens. I know it's for the community garden, but if you had when you first started, because you've got a big section.
Yes.
How big is your section actually?
We've got 60 acres, but the actual garden itself is probably about just over 2 acres.
2 acres of garden?
Of
and
garden.
We're talking about vegetable gardens?
Oh, no. The vegetable gardens, they'd be probably 100 square metres.
Yes, well, they're quite big because I've been down there and you've developed them over a period of time.
Yes, all of them are raised. I don't grub around on the dirt on my hands and knees. Once I get down, I've got to go, crawl for quite a while to find a post to kind of climb back up again. So I'm a very lazy gardener. All my beds are raised, and I perch on the side of them rather delicately, with a glass of wine in hand and weed the occasional weed.
That sounds actually
my kind of garden.
I was going to say
right there.
It's so easy.
I think we've been talking about this, that actually, lifestyle gardening, it's not quite the same as a farmer growing, fields of crops. We have time for that odd rhubarb wine or whatever, And I know, Anna-Marie, the first time I met you, you had a still going in your lounge.
We still have a still going.
You still have
we do. We are, just to clarify this, we are one of the only countries in the world where you're legally allowed to distill spirits. Before anybody comes and arrests me.
Yes.
So I don't know why. I've got no idea. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
No. I find that I have to say I did find that very interesting. I do have a South African friend who had a still in South Africa, and we went for a do at his place, and the children were very small, so we were a little bit late. By the time we arrived, everyone had that sort of smashed look against the wall, and he was doing apples. He now lives in Cromwell, and he has a little still on the farm there.
Right.
So, and he was told he can do, distill, but he's not allowed to drive. Well, knowing the strength he had, I would suggest he wouldn't drive anyway.
Yes, yeah.
But, Marnie, you've got quite extensive beds, or I saw one being driven down the road, one of those raised beds today. I know it was going somewhere else, but you do have ones in your garden.
Yes, when I bought this house, it came with a quite extensive veggie garden, although there wasn't a lot in it when I moved in. But I've redesigned the garden quite a lot since then. I follow something called permaculture principles, which is about trying to reduce the workload and basically get nature to do some of the work for you.
And so that you can drink the glass of wine.
So you can drink the glass of wine, okay. Yes, absolutely. So as I've been redesigning the garden around, I had these 3 small raised beds that I didn't need anymore. So I've passed them on.
To the community garden.
To the community garden.
Now, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because hopefully there's some people who are listening who are just starting to garden, and my 2 neighbours are building beds. Now, we all seem to go for raised beds these days. I mean, I noticed our hero, John Seymour, who Marnie has read, and I know you haven't read it, Anna-Marie, but I read the other day again, he talked about trenches, where you dig deep things. We're not into that anymore.
No, it's a lot of hard work, and I think there's easier ways of gardening where you can add organic matter to the soil and things, and we're a little bit more widely read and a little bit more kind of worldly now with other
Clever.
Well, just there's a lot of other ideas coming out of YouTube and from other cultures and things that don't necessarily have to be actually in the ground as such. Not actually down at soil level. You can, when you raise a bed up, there's certain advantages in doing that. You have pretty much complete control over what you actually have in your garden bed. You're not limited to a clay soil or a lot of rocks.
Actually, that's really important, because I think I was going to talk about soil. You wouldn't have to now, if you're going to have raised beds, do soil analysis, would you?
No, you don't. I mean, you do. There's soil is a huge topic. It really is quite enormous. I mean, you have to, within your garden bed, if you just add organic matter like horse manure and seaweed and sheep poo and all that sort of thing, and compost, if you just add that to your garden bed, you'll notice it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and eventually disappears, because it is all carbon, and it does all the microbes. They actually they eat. They consume all of that organic matter and turn it into carbon dioxide and water, and that's why it eventually vanishes. You think birds are nicking it, but they're not. It's actually it's an organic process that this is actually happening.
Yes.
It's a living soil. It's a living organism that this is going on. So you do need to have a certain amount of mineral in your actual garden bed. So this is where the silty loam comes in, which isn't very prevalent in the Wairarapa. So if you get a lot of kind of the sort of the substrate of the soil, which is the minerals, and it's the sand and it's the silt and the clay actually within your garden bed, and then you add organic matter to that, then that's what starts to make a really good soil.
So can we step back a bit when you talk about the silt and the other the minerals?
Yeah.
Can you buy loads of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now
Topsoil.
So you get just. Would it be topsoil from someone clearing a section, or would it be special?
Oh, you need to be a little bit careful, because there are some rather nasty weeds that can come with topsoil if you're not careful.
Yes, I was thinking the same.
I can remember years and years and years ago when gardeners used to sterilise their soil. You could actually buy these big metal containers that had a heater in them, and you'd put the soil in it and you would heat it up to whatever temperature it was, and that would sterilise the soil, and that was the thing you were then supposed to grow stuff in. We now know that actually that is not the best way to go about using soil.
Kill everything.
Kills everything. Kills all the weed seeds, but it kills all the bacteria, the mycelium, everything that's in there, it gets killed as well. So a more organic approach to that, a better way to that, so to retain what you need in the soil to transfer the nutrients from the soil to the vegetables, which is what the bugs do, is to make sure that the topsoil that you buy is good quality and doesn't have things in it like oxalis and onion weed and all those other nasties.
We can have a whole program on weeds.
We can.
And
no doubt we will.
We will, and we can actually list the ones you hate the most. You know, I have a few that I see in the garden, and I'm just going to that total twitch because I know it's spreading.
That's oxalis for me.
That's exactly. But now, all right. So we can't just go to the guy who's cleaning a section off and say, could I have a load of topsoil? So where would you go?
Something like Higgins?
Yeah, you can. You can do that, but there are risks.
Yeah.
So,
all right. And we're not going to burn it. We're not going to.
No. If you're just going to bring it back, chuck it into a raised bed, and the good thing about using raised beds is it limits how far that soil is going to go. So if you're going to import some weeds, then they'll just be in that bed. You are making a bit of a rod for your own back, though. But there are landscaping companies and outdoor supply companies. There's a couple of them locally here who will supply gravel, topsoil, sand, pretty much anything you need to put a garden together.
Okay, now we're great fans of Monty Don, who's that English gardener.
Yep.
Do you ever watch Monty Don? You'd fall in love with him. He's gorgeous, but mainly because he's got lovely dogs. But they always add gravel and stuff as they are, making up beds and things, and I'm always fascinated. So you can get it here.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we've never done that.
Yeah. We wouldn't add gravel.
Well, not gravel. I meant sort of. I don't know what he calls it. But it's small. It's like sand and stuff like that.
Right. Yes,
it's just drainage.
Drainage. It's drainage he adds.
Depends on where you are, but unless you're sitting on top of a clay soil, you wouldn't really need to add drainage. No, It's actually more about water retention.
Right.
And the Wairarapa, the water levels are I mean, I don't know. What do you have water issues at your place where you've got water up around your ankles?
Yes, I know. But I always wondered why we haven't grown rice here. You know, in winter we have a paddock that looks like a rice paddy, and I always think, maybe I should.
Cold.
Yes, I suppose. No, I'm just being facetious.
I see.
Okay. Maybe we have to heat it, but yes, okay. So you can get it from a landscape, company, Higgins or whatever they are, and they would deliver it. But then you have to work with it because that's only half of what your bed's going to be, and the other half is the magic.
Is the organic matter. Now that is in the form of. I mean, compost is a very specific thing too.
Yes, we can talk at length about that.
Yeah, we can go on about compost, but you've also got things like horse manure, sheep manure, chicken manure. You've got to be very careful with that because it does burn plants. It's very strong.
Chicken manure,
particularly chicken manure, and horse manure too. That heats up because it's got a lot of sort of dry matter in it that then starts to compost and gets really, really hot. Cow manure doesn't. Cow manure you can plant straight into.
Oh, how interesting.
Very strange. It's what they call a cold composter, so it doesn't.
Mind it splats, doesn't it?
Oh, it splats in a big way.
So maybe that's when it sort of cooled itself down a bit.
No,
I'm just
it never heats up actually because when you know a cow pad in a paddock, if you leave it for a week and then flip it over, I don't know why I need to do this, but I do with my little gumboot. There's always worms underneath it.
Yeah. They're working on it already.
They work on it immediately. They don't. There's no ammonia left in it. Cows have got so many digestive systems that it goes through, and there's not much left in it by the time it comes out. It really is just kind of.
So if you have access to, we have a lot of cows around here.
I have a lovely farmer up the road who drops it off in my garden, and it's the world's biggest cow pad. Actually, must be almost half a ton. He just brings it. He's cleaning out his sump in his cow shed, and so he just brings this enormous pile of cow poo and just dumps it.
And then do you add it to other things?
Oh yes, yeah. No, I take it away gradually over.
And you put it into compost?
I chuck it in compost, put it on top of my pumpkin patch. I've got a big raised pumpkin patch, which is just basically a giant compost heap. Whack my pumpkins in there. And I add it to other garden beds. You can make a kind of a compost or cow manure tea out of it if you like. The one thing about cow manure is because it doesn't heat up, it doesn't kill the wheat seeds, so it comes with an enormous amount of grass in it. So if you want to reseed a patch of dodgy looking soil, you just smooth this stuff out in a little bit of a layer, and it grows grass really
How
fast.
Wonderful. I know. All those patches on the lawn that have sort of died off over a period of time.
But it also brings in an awful lot of weed seeds as well.
Yes. If we're going to talk about manures and things, I mean, we had sheep, and Donald would make the compost and stuff, and wherever I put it down, I spend my life weeding.
Yes, a lot of clover.
And there's an awful lot that one forgets that it has been eaten up and it's just gone through the process and it's back there again.
Yes, if you put it at the bottom of your garden bed, not the bottom, but
underneath,
under about like 15 to 20 centimetres, bung it down there and then put other stuff on top, like compost that's been through the heat process, all the weed seeds have died and things, and then and seaweed is another really good one as well.
Yes.
You can dry that out on garden paths in the summer and then jump up and down on it, and it just crumbles up really well.
Or run your lawnmower over it.
Yes.
Or make a tea. But let's go back to so we're talking about manures and things. So you can get the interesting thing, because even if you're on a smaller section, there's always someone down the road who has something they want to get rid of.
Poo is the big poo is everywhere. Am I allowed to say poo?
Yeah, I used to have a neighbour when I lived at my old property. I had a neighbour just down the road who had a lot of horses, and the standing joke in the district that I was a net importer of poo because I go round to this lady with about 20 big feed bags and fill them up and then drag it all back to my place and put it all around fruit trees and all over the shop. So I was a net importer of poo.
Because I know my brother up in Auckland, they do have a small veggie patch, but they have lots of horses, and it's a pain in the neck to get rid of the stuff. I mean, they never stop. Well, it's like any animal. They never stop. And so you end up with these huge piles. But, getting back to, we've got cows, we've got all sorts of things. I know that chicken manure, you do have to kind of be careful. It's very strong.
You need to compost it first. If you put it around, and no matter what the books tell you, I did read a rather silly book the other day that said, if your chicken poo has gone on to like straw or wood shavings in your thingy, then you can put it straight around your citrus treat.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's what I thought when they died. I wasn't very pleased, actually.
No,
and it's
no.
That was really silly advice. You need to put it into a compost system first, and it's mainly because it's got so much ammonia. And
I was going to say, and you can smell it.
It's
That's the irony
the
of
uric
it.
acid.
Yes, the uric acid.
It's very strong.
So we've started to go on a little bit towards. So we've talked about you've got access to soil if you need it.
Yep.
You've got access to manure if you need it, and now we're going to go on to talking about compost. And there are books written on compost and ideas. How do you compost, Marnie? What do you do?
Okay, I let my chickens do most of the work, actually.
Chicken composter.
Chicken composter, yeah. So I use...
It's not a worm farm, it's a chicken.
I'm a chicken composter, yeah.
I love this program. I have to say, I learn things every day. Anyway, keep going.
So I built a very big run for my chickens. I don't actually have that many chickens, but they have a very, very big run. And when I'm weeding in the garden or chopping down bushes or whatever it is that I'm doing, I take all of that stuff and I put it into the run. So I started at one end of the run, I put it there, and then the next pile next to that, and then the next pile next to that. And over time, the chickens get in there, they poop all over it, they scratch it all through.
They love scratching, they break up things.
They scratch it all through. The rain comes along, the wind and the sun comes along, and it all gets broken down. The chickens turn it over, and then after 6 months or so, I can go in, scrape off any stuff that hasn't decomposed yet, get my spade in there, and lovely compost, and it works ever so well. The chickens, it has to be said, you need a few to be able to do this, but particularly if you have a large garden and you are generating a lot of garden rubbish to put in there. But no, it does work really, really well. And I think the fact that the chickens also poop in it, because you were saying the chicken poop is really hot.
Yes.
It actually helps to activate it.
Yes.
So it composts down quite quickly, as long as you don't get too much grass clippings in there. I don't tend to put much in the way of grass clippings in there.
Why is that?
Because there's too much green.
Okay,
I'm
waiting for one of you to tell us the three main ingredients.
Yeah, you need a good combination of what we'll call live matter, so things like grass clippings and fresh green clippings.
Yep.
You need a good quantity of brown matter, so that might be dead organic matter, hay, straw, that kind of thing.
Even apparently paper,
paper,
and
paper's
cardboard
good.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you need to layer them to mix them together. And you can buy compost activators as well if you want to sprinkle a little of that onto. I don't bother personally, but you need to layer these things in to get them to interact with each other, so the bugs have got something to eat, so the bugs can break it all down. And that's the fastest way to make compost. If you make a good compost heap, it'll really heat up. You can actually cook inside a compost heap.
I've forgotten who one of the writers, a New Zealand writer, was talking about. Someone asked about mice and rats that love compost heaps.
Yeah.
And she says, well, that's a good sign, because your compost heap is heating up, and that's what you need. You need the heat. So you've got your green, your brown, and your manure mixed up, and you leave it for whichever
till it's done.
Till it's done.
And you can tell how it's done. Like if you can't see any like recognisable organic matter, like a stick or a leaf or something rather, then that's pretty much if it's all kind of brown and crumbly and smells nice. Needs to smell quite sweet.
Yes.
Yes. And not like you're going to sprinkle it on your wheat bix.
No.
Just appealing, and you can smell when it's gone sour, a bit like silage that's gone off.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
It's sort of that's not a good look.
Yeah, and so there's also a thing about wetness. I mean, if it rains a lot, do you cover it? Or?
No.
Okay.
I like the rain. The rain, people don't realise how much nitrogen is actually in rain.
Okay.
This is why when you're watering your garden, water with your hose, it never does as well as when it's rained.
Yep.
And a thunderstorm especially puts an enormous amount of nitrogen into the rain that lands on our grass. So there's a huge amount of nitrogen.
There's a scientific... I love these scientific little things.
Yeah.
We can quote this all over the place. So okay. Thunderstorms are great.
Yeah, thunderstorms are very, very good. They're quite valuable for putting nitrogen back into the rain, and then that lands on the soil, and then everything grows really well. And just a normal rain, there's quite a bit of nitrogen too, but a thunderstorm especially, and it's millions and millions of tons of nitrogen that come back to Earth, which is nice.
There's your sign.
Aside from the entertainment value of watching a good thunderstorm, which is always pretty good anyway.
Yes.
Oh, I used to sit under the bed. I grew up in the Highveld in South Africa, and every afternoon, 4 o'clock, there'd be a thunderstorm, and I hated them because, I've seen a tree split in half. I was terrified of them. But yes, okay, so we can be happy when we have the thunderstorms. Now, Anne-Marie, that must be your scientific background.
It is, yes. I've done a degree in horticulture, and soil science was quite a large part of that. So.
Okay, so here we have the expert, but we have our practical experts as well, don't we?
do, yes.
So now, Marnie, you've got the chickens doing your work, and we've got the cow pats. And have you got a big heap,
I've
Anne-Marie?
got 15 compost bins at home.
Are they bins?
There's many different ways that
Yes,
I compost. So I have the round plastic bins, which I really like. The ones you just buy from Mitre
with little holes at the sides. Yes,
little holes at the side.
Yep.
I've got a big one that's supposed to be one of those natural turning ones that's got a rat, Mrs. Ratty, who lives in that, which is great because that's where I put my chicken bones and onion skins and.
Sorry, say it again. You have Mrs. Rat.
Mrs. Ratty. She's lovely, Mrs. Ratty. When I take the compost out of the bottom, it's one of those 3-layered ones where things. She always comes and sits on my foot, which is just. She's a big rat, but she's lovely. She's not one of those nasty grey scaly ones. She's a nice brown, soft.
Does she have babies in there as well?
I don't know. I want to assume so. I'm not sure.
Okay, but she's quite happy in there.
Oh, she loves being
Doesn't
in the
do
compost
anything
bin.
naughty, just make.
She's fantastic in the compost bin. This is one of the few places you'd actually want to, is because she eats all the stuff that no one else wants to eat, and she turns it all into compost,
Poo,
which is great.
It's poo again.
It's poo again. Yes, it is indeed. Now, what I don't want her in is my chicken house because she's going to do damage in there.
She'll eat the chickens.
So I also have a chicken composter. No chickens were harmed in the making of the compost. It's on a slope, and it's got macrocarpus slabs on the side of it, sort of thing. So and it's quite close to the fence on one end, where that's where it starts.
Yes.
And I, like Marnie, lift everything over the fence. And the chickens just scratch it down, and then every couple of days I go in with a rake and then rake it back up again, and then they scratch it all down again. And I also have about 50 guinea pigs in the same enclosure. It's a big, huge chicken run. And then they come and they eat with the chickens. And then guinea pigs, as anybody who's ever had guinea pigs, poo a lot.
Yes.
Enormous amount. You go under and poo in the end. So that's great. So they're kind of helping the whole kind of chicken.
It's a whole process, isn't it? It's quite fascinating.
Yeah. That's the whole permaculture thing. It's about making those connections between the things that nature does naturally and then making them work for you. Yes. So like the downhill thing that Anne-Marie's talking about here, that's a recognised principle in permaculture where you get your animals to turn your compost by scratching it downhill.
Yes.
Yeah. And gravity works for you, and the chickens work for you,
and they work for you. I mean, chickens are amazing. They're hellish in your flower gardens. They are banned, and we have this division, and I say it with little thin lips, between my flower garden and the veggies and the chickens, because they can also destroy a veggie garden. I mean,
silverbeet, a big rooster. Silverbeet. She's 30 seconds. She's all over.
All gone. And so you don't put them loose there, but. So are both of your chickens sort of housed?
I've got a.
You've got quite a big run.
It's like Fort Knox. We have a big ferret problem at home.
Oh.
And ferrets and stoats and weasels, and they just come in, and it's just a giant massacre.
Yes, I know.
You're very close to the bush, though. You're quite wild out there. Aren't you?
The 1080 has stopped a lot of that, though, which is really good.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're 1080 people, but you do notice a massive difference in the sort of the lack of stoats and ferrets. Ferrets have got a range of 250 hectares.
Really?
And they go around. It is absolutely massive, and they come past about every 5 to 7 weeks. And
so they do a run. They just do a round
because they have to eat.
Yes.
Like, 6
are they
to 9
meat
times
eaters?
a day,
They meat eaters.
Oh yeah.
So that's why they'll go for those chickens.
Yep. And the guinea
eggs.
pigs.
And eggs.
They love eggs. All mustelids love eggs. They really do.
Yeah. They really like guinea pigs.
Yes. And they love guinea pigs.
Yes, and that never ends well. But anyway, so that's why we have this huge Fort Knox.
Yes.
6-foot high fences with little thingies out the side. So
they can't climb it.
No, they can't.
And they're not diggers.
No. They'll scrabble, but our fences dug into the ground as well. So.
I mean, Marnie, you in England, you had foxes.
Yeah, I didn't keep chickens at the time when I was in the UK, but I know people who have. And foxes, stoats, weasels, hawks, all of those things are
horrendous.
all
Yes.
issues.
I often wondered, I love those walled gardens, and they were obviously
the
built
big Victorian
the big
gardens,
Victorian
yeah.
ones. They were built to keep out
Oh,
Rabbits
that was
mostly.
rabbits
yeah.
and foxes.
It was about heat retention too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Microclimate.
Yes.
Yeah, those big walls that they have. We
yes.
use that a lot in our garden. Anyway, sorry, we're digressing.
Yeah, no, we'll go on to that because that's important. So with the composting, we'll finish that off before we have a little bit of music. But so there are many ways of having a compost
I do
heap.
compost gardening as well.
Yeah.
So I'll actually make my compost in my raised garden beds because we have a big kind of industrial mulcher that sucks up whole trees when we're thinning the garden out, and so that just gives you like an enormous trailer load of mulch.
Yes.
And then I just will put that at the bottom of a garden bed and then layer. You do mulch, and then you do chicken manure, and then you do cow manure, and then you put more mulch in, and then you do some soil, and then so you get this layering effect, like a big kind of sandwich, really salad sandwich.
And that slowly just works its way through.
And you can plant straight into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's
You know what I
fun,
always
so-
find amazing about compost is that you can start with a so-called bare piece of land, starting a compost heap, and before you know where you are, there's all sorts of things running around inside. I mean,
Yes.
all the little microorganisms and all the little, we used to call them hohos, but the little insects and whatever
Yeah.
you want to call them, running around chewing up stuff. And they come from where? I mean, and the worms as well.
Yeah.
It's
Come from
amazing.
everywhere. It's like when you start up a compost heap or a compost bin, you might as well stick a sign out that says "free food here," because they will come for miles.
and accommodation.
Yeah,
Accommodation,
and
yeah.
a nice
This is-
warm accommodation.
This is a happy place, you know.
yeah,
Yes.
come on in.
Yeah. Now, I mean, you mentioned the different ways you do it, but some people use the bins. Some people use. Now, I love, or rather, I should say, my husband or the worker. Loves pallets, and I mean we have hundreds of pallets in this
Yeah,
country,
we do.
and they're one of the easiest ways to make a box
Yep.
with pallets.
With 4 pallets.
But try
Yes.
and do it as 1, 2, 3 or something, so that you can turn your
I've also
compost.
got a 3-bay concrete. I mean, not concrete. Brick.
Brick, yes.
Brick compost
Okay.
bin, and they're like 1 metre 20 by 1 metre 20. So
Yes.
they're very large. They take an enormous amount of compost.
Right.
And a lot of people talk, but there's no air getting in. I say you don't actually need that much air in a compost. People make a big mistake and they think that the compost needs lots and lots of air.
Okay.
They actually don't, because everything drains out the bottom. And if you have air coming in around the sides, what happens is it dries, and compost needs a lot of moisture
Yes.
to actually be able
Okay.
to compost properly. So if you have my compost bins are solid. I don't. You don't.
Yes, I've seen the brick ones. In fact, I
Yeah,
think in all
yeah.
those old walled gardens, they usually had brick ones.
Yes.
if I remember rightly.
Yes, they do. That's
Yeah.
right. And it's this kind of fallacy that you have to have a lot of air in a compost bin. So they're putting sticks down and they're doing this and doing that.
Yes, and they put a pole down the middle and shake it around and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
If you add too many grass clippings, then yes, you're going to end up with a sludgy mess because you've got too much nitrogen, too much green, as
Right.
Barney would say. So you have to have a certain amount of air, but you can do that with leaves, with just dried leaves,
Yes.
and with a lot of the garden
Except
matter.
for those blue gum leaves.
What happens with the blue gum leaf?
They don't deteriorate very easily. They take a long time.
That's okay. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
if things take a long time. It's fine.
We've got a lot of blue gum. But it's saying that as well. So you can make a box or a thing, but you can also dig a pit
Yes,
and
you
put
can.
it in.
Yep. As long as your drainage is good.
Yes.
You know, if your pit fills up with water.
Oh yes,
in the
of
middle
course.
winter,
We are in Wairarapa, which is virtually a water plain in some parts. I mean, I think, as I said earlier on, we have enough to make rice paddies at times.
Yes.
But
I mean, you could tell whether that was going to work. In the middle
Yes.
of winter, dig a big hole.
and if it fills, you
and
know,
it fills
it's
up with water, you go,
bad
"Ooh,
idea.
bugger,
Yeah.
don't do that. There.
But
Yeah.
I
Move to higher
know
ground,
my
yeah.
father always had a pit. You know.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Right.
And they just turned it out once a year, and there you were. You had your beautiful compost. We
Yeah.
also had rats. I do remember
Yes.
that. But yes, and then we haven't got onto it. But maybe I'll take a little break, and we can talk about worm farms and leaf bins.
Oh yes.
All right, let's go for that. So we're going to put on our music. This is always a bit of a challenge. welcome back. We're going to start talking. We have so much to talk about. We'll have to have a second program, I think. But let's just finish off with the famous worm farms, which are very popular at the moment. What do either of you have a worm farm?
Yes, I do. It got a millipede in it, which didn't end well.
No, I was going to say, didn't the millipede eat the worms?
They're carnivorous, aren't they?
I think they are.
Yeah.
Dodgy little millipedes. So it's certainly still there, and it's. My husband suggested it was mostly tea coming out the bottom rather than pee.
Yeah. Because that's the idea, is that they make a liquid.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah.
I've got it in my shade house where I grow my little native seedlings and things, and they seem very happy in there, sort of thing. But you've got to be careful what you give them. Some things they don't like. They don't like citrus, and they don't like onion leaves, and they're a bit picky.
Yes.
If you can eat it, they'll eat it.
Right. But, I mean, we've talked about composting. Surely everything just goes in the compost heap.
It's just a different way of doing the same thing,
yes,
really.
it is.
I don't have a worm farm myself, because I put all the scraps that I would put into a worm farm, I put through the chickens instead.
Of course, that's true.
So
that's
they do
true.
that job
so
for me.
even meat?
Yeah, chickens are omnivorous. They eat.
Okay, now why I say that,
veggie
because I
and
always
meat.
thought that sort of attracted the rats, but...
And that's another reason why I put it through the chickens rather than putting it through the
Yes.
worm farm.
Although in our little break we had someone come in and talk to us, Michael, about rats in his compost heap, and we went away last year and we came back and we were feeding the chickens, and out of the wood bin came mother, father and 10 babies, and the chickens just watched them while they had their meal, and then they had a little meal. And so we put down poison in pipes. We never leave it so that other animals can get it. But it was amazing. They had just found their way in there. So we don't normally put meat or anything out, and yet they still come.
I do,
Okay.
but when I put food scraps out, I only put down as much as the chickens can clear up
eat.
in the space of a couple of hours.
Right.
So I don't put a lot down. So bread is another one. Everything loves bread. The cows love bread, the sheep love bread, the chickens adore bread.
So the guinea pigs.
Guinea pigs love bread.
love it.
But if you put too much down at one time, it's not really good for them to only be eating bread.
No.
But also it means that you've got the potential to attract rats. I mean,
Yes.
I've heard people say, "Oh, if you've got chickens, you've got rats." That's actually not true.
No, it's not true. They come for the food.
They
but
do.
You, but you must just watch it.
Food, if there's spare food lying about, they're opportunists. They will come and take it.
Yep.
And the one other thing before we move on, and I want to go back to the digging and the whole thing about the thing, is the leaf bin. Now that was a Monty Don idea, and we have a separate leaf bin, and it breaks down divinely into almost like soil at the end. It's a thing. And that we use in the garden as well. But let's get back to now the beds. Now we've talked a little bit about raised beds, and Moni, you wanted to talk about why we do what raised rather than digging, or how do you want to talk about
traditionally veggie gardens, you would never have seen a raised bed, really.
No,
they just weren't there.
Yeah.
People just worked directly into the soil. And that's great if you've got one of these Victorian walled gardens in the UK that has been carefully tended for many generations and the soil is fabulous. But that's not always the case. You know, you might move somewhere where the soil isn't that good.
Yeah.
There are things that you can do to help enrich that soil, but if you can work that into a limited space which is occupied by a raised bed, it gives you much more options about the kind of soil conditions that you can create. It also means that when you're working with soil that's in a raised bed, you get to plant carrots that come out carrot shaped rather than all sorts of weird shapes, because it's full of stones and gravel and rocks and Lord knows what else.
Vegetables of interesting shapes.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Well, carrots are the worst, because you either have them stunted or sort of...
They are.
Some
They absolutely
horrible
are.
shape.
But they're the same thing with parsnips, all
Any
those kind of
root
root
thing,
vegetables.
yes.
It just gives you a lot more control over the kind of soil conditions that you want to create, depending on what it is that you're growing, what it is that you want to plant in there. And also there's that thing about perching on the side with a glass of wine in your hand as well. That's also lovely.
They have to be high enough for that. I was a little bit low. I think I'm going to have to tell Donald he's got to put them up another, because I still have to bend, you know. And I, except for my herb garden, and another little garden is raised very high, much higher. It does take a lot more. You've got to put a lot of stuff in it first. And as you said, Anne-Marie, things do slowly collapse, so you have to keep feeding it.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't. It won't stay the same all the time.
You should be doing anyway, because
Yes.
when you're growing, particularly if you're growing a lot of produce in a small space, it will consume all of the nutrient,
Yeah.
or the vast majority of the nutrient that's in that soil. So you're going to have to be replenishing that. Otherwise, the next year you plant into it and you'll do very poorly, because there's nothing there for the plants to.
Which
to
just
survive
brings
on.
me to one point. Also mentioned, something I was reading and listening to, lime. I mean, people put lime into compost, but do you have to?
No, you don't. But again, it depends. Lime alters pH. So, for example, if you use a lot of horse poo around the place, then when I use that, I always put a nice big handful of lime on, because horse poo is quite acidic. So I put a handful of lime on to
balances
redress
it
that.
more. Yes, okay.
Vegetables grow best at a slightly acidic 6.5.
So the scientist on the side there, are we going to go out and measure all our soil? I think we'll have to get you in there.
That's why you buy kits from the garden centre, so you can determine what the pH of your soil is.
If you have enough organic matter in your soil, that acts like a buffer. The whole idea of having lots of organic matter, which is compost basically, or humus as they call it, not hummus, which one eats with
one M, not two.
One M, not two. Then that acts as an enormous buffer for pH. So compost organic matter will actually attract the all of the nutrients that are in the soil, so it holds it. If you just have straight sand and
it's got nothing in it.
Nothing in it, and it also it can't hold on to it's a chemical process, but it holds onto the nutrients and releases them as they're needed. And like a sort of an osmosis sort of situation, where it's just gradually, as the compost is degrading through the little bugs and things. The nutrients become available to the plants, which is just fantastic. So the more organic matter you've got on there, the better. And it also helps as a buffer for the pH as well.
Okay.
So it stops it getting too acid and it stops it getting too alkaline. You've got to be careful with lime with some plants. Potatoes especially don't like lime. So they'll get... Strawberries don't like lime either, so you can get scab on potatoes. So you get that funny little kind of...
Yes, I know all about that.
Often that's because people have either added chicken manure, which is quite sort of alkaline. It's got a lot of uric acid as well. It's got alkaline thingies in it, or they've added soil that has lime in it. So you've got to be careful with that. I mean, it's not going to hurt the potato. Well, it doesn't hurt you.
No, you just got to peel your potatoes then. I mean, otherwise they look dodgy. They look dodgy.
They just look a bit dodgy.
If you have them, if you have them in kind of roast, people give them a little, what's that, you know?
Interestingly, a lot of commercial compost that you buy already has quite a high lime content.
Oh, really?
So if you buy compost, you probably wouldn't want to put it around your strawberries necessarily, and you definitely wouldn't want to add any more lime to it, but this is where a pH testing kit comes in handy.
Just saying that, because with the other things I want to talk about, but you can buy compost from the local authorities. I mean, Carterton's going to start selling
it from all over the place,
and you can buy it from Masterton, but I've never thought of measuring it or looking at it in more detail.
I think they'd probably do that with it in-house, actually. I'm pretty sure that they would keep a very careful eye on that.
Right.
They don't want a bad reputation. I mean, I'm just supposing that.
No. I mean,
it's not hard to do.
But for someone starting up totally afresh, it's sometimes the best way to get something in quickly.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if they haven't got time to start building a compost heap. Because a compost heap can take, a few weeks to really mature enough to be able to use months.
It depends on how you've built it. If you're a really, really good compost heap, can be ready in six weeks. But that's a heating up process.
Yes.
It's getting your layering exactly right. It's making sure that you've got enough moisture, that you're not too wet, you're not too dry.
Yeah.
It's a fraught little moment. It's like baking a cake, really.
I know.
If you have the Goldilocks of compost heaps, not too much, not too little, just right.
No one sat on it and broke it.
That's fantastic.
I think at its simplest, though, I mean, we're talking here a lot about raised beds and compost heaps and one thing and the next. And I know people who get really wrapped around the axles about this whole gardening thing. It's so complicated. And I'm a really strong advocate of just getting out there and doing it.
Yes.
When you go into the supermarket, and when you walk into the supermarket, you walk past that lovely display of all those little seedlings that come wrapped in newspaper for those of us who are in New Zealand, and you'll get 9, 10 or 11 little seedlings that are all ready to go, all wrapped up in a little parcel, at about $4, I think, something like that. And a gardening vegetable gardening is as simple as taking one of those, paying for it, taking it home, and popping it into some soil somewhere, and that's it. And you're gardening.
That's right. And I thought you were going to also talk about when you get in the supermarket, the first place is usually the vegetable stuff, and to be able to walk past them and say, I've actually got this already.
Well, the place I stop is mushrooms, and I've got plans for a mushroom cake.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a way of doing that, I'm sure. Until your house is on concrete. But yes, there will be a place somewhere.
Oh, no, we've got 60 acres and it's on river flat, so I can just tunnel into a thingy and build a little mushroom cave.
Get the spores and there you are.
You have a cheese cave next to it?
Well, yes, apparently you can't put them together.
Really?
I know, because the mushroom fungus
will get into the cheese.
So I know. It's a weird
We're going to have a whole program on cheese making because I think cheese making is very interesting. That's quite technical, actually. It isn't as easy as that. But yes, so let's get back to so now we've got raised beds. But as you say, you can dig your garden. I mean, that's still done. And I was going to ask more about, and I cannot pronounce that word.
Hugelculture.
Please talk about that, because there's a great demonstration going on in the community garden in Carterton. If anyone wants to go and look what it is, go now.
Yes, we're having a working bee tomorrow, actually. A little bit of a plug for the community garden. 10 till 2 o'clock.
Okay, so explain what it is.
Well, hugelculture, I think it's a Swedish or German word, and it means hill culture, is what it's actually about. So traditionally, it was rotten wood. They'd cut down trees and things, and they would stack the wood into kind of almost like a long barrow, shaped with like a triangle, big giant triangle. And it was for places where the soil was really awful. Basically, you're trying to garden on a rock, essentially, and also there's a whole heap of advantages to hugelculture. As the wood is rotting, it raises the temperature of the garden by anywhere between 0.5 degree to 2 degrees, depending on how fast your wood is rotting.
Hold on, the garden, you mean the bed? That is
the bed.
Yes, okay. So it's getting hot.
You've got this big kind of triangle made up of rotten wood that's stacked in quite tightly together, and then you add little bits on top of it, and then you whack some compost and a bit of soil, and then you stick some hay or some sort of organic matter over the top, like straw or baleage or something, just to keep the weeds down and the water in. Now, a hugelculture bed, as the wood rots, as you know, if you've ever picked up a piece of rotten wood in your garden, it's quite heavy and it's spongy.
It's got water in it.
It holds an enormous amount of water. So the hugelculture beds I have in my garden, I didn't water over summer at all, not once.
Oh, how fascinating.
I know, we had a big drought this year, and they just suck up so much water that, I mean, these are raised beds of about 60 centimetres, and I have the wood is packed in quite tightly in the bottom 30 centimetres, so half the bed is hugelculture. And then I put obviously all the compost stuff on top of that, and then put my plants in that. And so the wood sucks up this huge amount of water over winter and then just slowly releases it over summer.
Now, what was the wood you had? What sort of, was it pine?
No, so it was pine. It was pine. Now,
Okay.
pine goes off really quickly.
Yes, I know. That's why I asked.
It's a soft wood, and it gets infected with mycelium and things, and funguses and stuff, and so that starts to degrade really quite quickly. As anyone who has had firewood outside realises, you've got about a year, and then it's all over. So you've got to get that. But there's an enormous use for rotting firewood. It's to put it in the bottom of your garden.
Okay.
And it also it's like a composting system, so it also acts as a buffer for nutrients as well, which is really good. And it raises the temperature of your garden.
And so then when you grow things, I mean, anything can grow, pumpkins or creepy things or whatever.
Everything. It works
anything.
really, really well.
I think it's actually from memory, I think it's actually a Swiss idea.
Is it Swiss?
Yeah, I think it's a Swiss guy that started off. And the thing you were talking about there about the poor soil and getting the additional heat was really important, because they were doing it up the sides of mountains, where the soil was thin and poor, and where of course the temperatures are several degrees less. So having this form of gardening meant that they could overcome both of those problems.
Well, it got it out of the permafrost as well. It was coming from some of these places are very, very cold, and if you have something raised up above the
it's out of the because the ground holds.
It's also on a slope too. So if you face it north south kind of thing, you get the sun hits this thingy at like a 45-degree angle. So it's on a very low, in winter or in early spring when your sun's only.
Which I was going to ask you, is there a right way or a wrong way to lay your gardens, according to north, south, east, west, or anything?
Well, is it supposed to be I reckon north is. You know what? I do all of it.
You just do it where the land is, dear buddy.
I do it. To be honest, it's an arty-farty moment. I kind of do it with how I get quickest to the house because I know that if I don't have a hedge or a wall, people are just going to trample over the top of my garden beds.
Okay.
And they do. So I tend to make straight lines to the front door. I know that sounds really odd. So some of my garden designs, you look at them and go, that's a bit strange, what have you done there? But that's why, is because I know that people will just basically beat a path.
Okay, you see, there's always a logic in one's garden.
Oh,
Yes.
totally.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah.
Talking about the raised beds, I think we made one little mistake. We made them too wide because people,
Yes.
you need them. They must be able that you can reach into them.
You mustn't tip into them,
Yeah.
because then you become part of the compost.
Yes, I know. Mind you, quite organic matter, Martin.
Oh, no. Well, yes, we can
All this
occasionally
natural sort of burials and stuff might be really worthwhile to think about. So
maybe not on the community garden.
no, not in the community garden. I was fascinated because there was a huge load of, I think it was broken up stuff, and now today it's in a sort of, that's going to be for the Maori herbal,
the Maori medicinal
yes,
garden. Yes,
but when I saw it a week ago, it was just a huge lump.
it was a huge pile, 25 tonne, I think.
Where did you get
outside there.
that from?
Now, that came from the council. I saw it several years ago in one of the council depot yards outside AMP showgrounds at Clearville. And I said to the
What was it doing there?
Well, there's a long story. I'll make it shorter. The Lions had cut it up as firewood years and years ago, and unfortunately it got wet, and then they never used it, and it just sat there rotting in this giant pile. So it was these big bits of firewood,
Yes.
but it was just...
It's all
big
wet and
rounds.
soft. Yes, I saw
It was
that.
just huge, big rounds, and it was just left there to rot, and no one came and collected it, so eventually they were going to take it away and push it into a paddock and burn it. And I said, no.
I was going to say, don't burn.
Don't
Yes.
I said,
that.
please don't do that. I said, I would love it for the community garden.
Okay.
So they very kindly came along, picked it up with a big kind of slungy thing. I'm
Yes.
sure there's a technical word, and it's not slungy thing. And squished it, and then popped it into a big truck.
And then offloaded it
And
there.
then offloaded it outside the
Yes.
community gardens and said, now, because it's Friday afternoon, you've got till Monday morning, dear, to get rid of that.
Oh.
So, big working bee, obviously. And we popped it, so we did the big bits of wood, the more solid bits we put at the bottom of the garden beds. We lined them with black plastic, first of all. This is the macrocarpa raised beds. We lined them with black plastic, stacked this...
Are there holes in the plastic?
There are, but not many. Not many. It's a very hot garden, that community garden, and we're trying to retain as much water as we can. They're not going to fill up with water, I can tell you that.
Oh, okay.
We only get about, is it 600 to 700 millimetres in...
Because we get less in the town than...
I think it's less than that when you head a bit further east. It's
we get twice what you get. I think we get 1,300 out under the hills there.
Yeah.
We get a lot of rain, sort of thing. But I think it's very dry, well, not very dry, moderately dry in Carterton. So rain was never going to be an issue with these beds. So I got a fork, and the beds are about, I think, 3 metres, over 3 metres long, nearly 4 metres. And I just stabbed it 3 times in the bottom of the plastic.
Okay.
And that was
It's like making a pie, you know.
Exactly like making a pie. Let the steam escape, sort of thing.
Yes.
And oddly, people, what about the worms? The worms are going to come. Trust me, they will come up through.
I know.
That
This is
plastic.
what
They
we're
are
saying. I think they're in the air, actually. I'm
They're
convinced of
actually in
it.
sheep poo as well.
Of course,
They
yes.
eat worm eggs in there.
Yeah.
And it pretty much in mouse poo.
Okay. Have you ever done this, Marnie?
These-
Built beds, these
the Hugel culture.
Hugel culture.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
For me, they're a fairly new thing. I only found out about these a couple of years ago, and because I'm still in the process of designing my garden, but I do have a nice big space down the back where I'm intending to make a very big pumpkin patch, because I grow lots of pumpkins.
Yes.
Hugel culture would be fantastic.
And that's what I'm intending
Yes.
to do with that, is to build those as the Hugel culture beds, and then
You pronounce it
plant all
so
my-
beautifully.
Yes, Hugel culture. We can all pronounce it Hugel culture.
and then I'll put my pumpkins straight into that.
Yes.
and they should go great guns.
Well, I mean, I always laugh because the best pumpkins come out of the compost heap.
They
You
do.
know that.
They
You
do.
know,
Yeah, they're
all
grass
this
feeders,
trying
yeah.
of making your bed, and then the best one comes out of or at the side of some tree or something, which is,
Yeah.
you know.
And a lot of that's about moisture retention.
Yes.
Compost sucks up a lot of moisture. That's the other.
Okay, so they're
because that's one of the
wet.
difficulties with a raised bed. That's, I mean, yes, you can get things started about 2 weeks earlier in them because they're a lot warmer. The water drains out of them quite quickly, so they don't get as cold in winter. They stay a lot hotter. They're drier, sort of thing. But they are drier in summer. So a hugelkultur system works really well with that.
I don't think
mulching.
the worker's going to be encouraged to dig up all his beds and then start again.
Well, as long as he's the one grubbing around on the soil.
Yeah, no, I sit usually on the stoop, the veranda,
with a glass of wine and
and sort of in a vague way say, now have you thought of, and I can just see the eyes going up. But yes, now which brings me to, the equipment needed. Now, with both of yours, was it just a good old fork and spade? I know you have some extra hands, Anna Marie.
See, we've also got 15 tractors, a digger and a bulldozer.
Oh, of course, you
I
big
know.
things.
And so hubby loves getting. It's a good day when he's got 5 little tractors out there and a digger, and he gets so gardening on our scale is huge.
Yes,
because it's.
But for us who don't,
a small fork would be fine.
Yes,
That's
my so my garden toolkit is a spade for digging holes to plant things. It's a fork for turning soil over before I plant stuff into it. It's a pair of secateurs for chopping stuff back when it's all got a bit out of hand, and it's a bucket for harvesting my produce when I have grown it.
You are very self-sufficient.
That's it. That is pretty much it.
We're kind of the other extreme.
I was going to say, there is a middle road,
I know.
Yes,
I'm
because
you've got to admire somebody who has their own bulldozer.
Yes, well, when we first came on, all our place was covered basically in grass. I mean, there was no vegetable garden. And we had a friend, when people retire, they was going to do everything. And this couple retired up to a tacky, and he bought rotavator, but one of the heavier ones, Of course, he dug his 3 beds, and then he didn't have a need for it. So we got the rotavator. Bloomin' heavy thing, I have to say. Yeah. And Crawford, the worker, he dug these beds, and I must admit they did work, but the first time round he didn't have it deep enough or something. I think it bounced along. But anyway, it really dug up everything well. Yes. However, we hadn't raked enough grass out. So for about a year later, every now and again, the grass would come out. Anyhow, we got rid of that to another people who had just retired and thought it was a good idea to grow vegetables. Now, years later, as the workers got a little bit older, I noticed digging was getting a bit heavy, so I bought him a very light one, a rotavator, which takes off.
they do kind of leap up out of the soil and run, don't they?
That's what I'm saying, all these things.
They do.
I'm warning you people out there who, you have to really think these things through. Oh. And I had this vision of it taking off down the paddock,
I did a very, very silly thing one day. Our little rotary cultivator thing was quite hard to start.
Yes.
And so you have to get it started outside the garden.
Yes,
so
you do.
I used to stand up on my garden beds and rotate, rotary hoe backwards and forwards and things. So I got it started on the outside, and I thought, I'm sure I can lift this into the garden bed.
And it's going.
And I lifted it in. I managed to do it because they're very, very heavy. Lifted it in there, but unfortunately it tipped over, and it got hooked up in the net that was covering the curtain.
Oh, yes, and it just ate it.
It just ate it, and it shot off across the garden. I couldn't do anything. I just lay there laughing as this thing was shooting off across, chewing this net, and eventually it just kind of stalled because it got so much net.
Well, the worker did it, and it went over the edge of the garden, and he'd taken very carefully off the black piping for the irrigation, and it happened to find the corner of the irrigation, and he calls me and he says, "Can you help me get it? I'm sure it'll get undone." I said, "I don't know about this. I think you'll have to cut it." No, I'm not going to cut my pipes. Meanwhile, the pipes are all mangled and twisted and everything. Yeah. Well, I mean, these are the joys of when you do gardening, and you have to be careful with these mechanized things. And that's why, Marnie, I think you're very sensible. You have a lot more control over a spade, and you have a lot more control over a fork, as long as you keep your feet out the way. I mean, that can happen. Or stand. You don't have a rake.
I do, but I don't actually use it a lot because I have all raised beds.
Yes, okay.
And I manage those just with
Yes, you
Basically
don't
the
need all this
fork,
fancy
really.
stuff. I mean, they show all these things you can buy, and special weeders and all the rest of it. Nothing comes.
Yeah, you can spend a fortune.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. But at its most basic, all you're really doing into that soil is just turning it over and getting the lumps out and planting stuff in it. That's really all you're doing. And if you're on a very, very large scale that requires extensive equipment,
Well,
that's one thing.
It's
But for
quite
most of us,
interesting.
we're
I think,
not.
Anna Marie, you're on the bigger size. Some of us are little, and then you're still doing the community garden, so you actually do have a view of both
Oh yes,
areas.
Yeah, the community garden's quite a different thing. It's because it's an enabled garden, so it means that people in wheelchairs can get and sort of not as able. They can get right round the whole garden sort of thing. So eventually it'll be paved.
Yes.
And so it's all lime kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's places for people to sit, and it's quite a different concept, this particular garden, than your usual home garden.
But your actual beds are not that different.
No, the beds are exactly the same.
That's I think.
Yeah, that's
before we go, we've only got about another 5 minutes. It's going to be very quick. Is watering now by having a what's it we call it again? Hugel culture. We don't have to water much, but I think that's something people have to think about. That where they place the garden, how they're going to get the water there.
Mulching. Mulch is just
okay.
The old mulch thing. It really makes a massive difference to your garden. So if you can mulch with leaves, or if you can mulch with grass clippings or bark or compost or
back to the compost. We love our compost.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, compost is fantastic.
Yeah, I mulch all my beds with compost, so that's what I'm actually doing at the moment, is clearing out my beds now. I've harvested everything out of the summer beds, clear them all out, sort them all out, get them all nice and level, and if I'm not going to use it, just cover it with a nice thick layer of compost. Then in the spring I'll just weed it and plant straight into it.
Yes. No, so this is the time of the year, all of you lying around and thinking about it. You should be out there getting your compost onto your beds and digging in. The only other thing I was going to mention, and we did mention in passing a bit, is things like rats and so on, are cats. Cats and vegetable gardens are not my best friends, because when you've just dug it over, especially if you're in an urban area, the cats from all around just think this is just fantastic. One big sandbox.
Yeah.
And there's nothing as disgusting as digging in a veggie garden with cat poo.
Yeah.
It's not the poo you want.
No. There's nothing good about either a dog or a cat.
No, they carry a number of diseases.
Well, that's what I was going to get at. So think. Now we're coming to an end. Is there anything the last words of advice or encouragement to those who are starting? I've got two neighbours I'm hoping are listening to this who are going to be starting their garden this weekend.
You can start at any level. As Marnie said, one little punnet from the supermarket and a little patch of gardens all you really need, and then you get quite excited, and then you start reading, and then you start looking, and you just get bigger and bigger, and it's you don't have to be overly scientific about the whole thing. I mean, we do because we into that sort of thing, but you don't have to. You can just kind of whack it in the ground, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my advice would be, don't get too big too fast.
Yes,
because once you've done that first part and you get all enthusiastic about it, the temptation is to put 15 raised beds in and
then you're going to
half a mile apart.
And then we're going to have another program. What do you do with the produce? The produce that comes from 15
What do you do
beds.
with the produce, and how do you maintain it is the other part of it. So maybe don't get too big too fast. I know that doesn't apply to you.
No.
Well, this is why you end up with 15 tractors, a bulldozer and a digger. But it's the chicken and the egg thing, because you have that much equipment, you can do things so much faster, so you just end up enormous. And then
I want to thank both of you. I've learned an awful lot. I always do in these programs. So I think we're going to get you both back again, because we've really just done the groundwork. And I want to say thank you so much. So you've all been listening to The Good Life or Living the Dream, and I think we all are living the dream, aren't we, in a way?
Indeed.
Yes. I'd hate it for you to say no at this point.
It's a nightmare. No, it's lovely.
We have had those stories of what goes wrong, but as you say, growing something and seeing it grow is so easy, and it's great fun.
Yeah.
So we broadcast on a Tuesday afternoon. Oh no, sorry, I'm really getting mixed up. I don't know what's with me. I'm a bit tired today. So it's the third Friday of every month at 2:30, and then we repeat it on Sunday morning. It's 11 a.m. and we're on TV at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday, Friday, that's this afternoon if you rush home, 5 o'clock, and Saturdays at 1 p.m. And you can get us on YouTube if you just look up The Good Life, Living the Dream, Arrow Radio. So for all of you out there, thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak again in a month's time. Thank you.